Making headlines for this week of January 19th. Tsunami coming. Rapid-fire series of distractions suggest a huge wave of shift may be upon us. In the name of freedom, George Soros recommits to attack on nationalism for the greater good. Dollar ditching. China downgrades U.S. credit rating ahead of petro-yuan launch. A shot across the bow or an economic ballistic launch. And cyanide cure. A mystery regarding amygdalin may explain fruit seeds as a cure for cancer.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. The past week has been quite full of potential distractions for those willing to look at the alternative perspective to the news. At least one more plane has been reported as having had to turn around, allegedly due to overflowing lavatories. This has become unusually common, with a number of flights suddenly having to turn around. We are also hearing reports of so-called meteors lighting up the skies over several cities, with one incident in Michigan, another being reported over Edmonton, Alberta in Canada. The hype over Steve Bannon's book has died down dramatically, and even Senator Dick Durbin is backtracking on his comment that Trump used a certain derogatory word that the media went ballistic over. While the media attempted to brand Trump as a racist against Haitians, Rand Paul, an eye surgeon before he entered politics, came forward to remind the media that before both of them, meaning Paul and Trump, entered politics, Donald Trump helped fund Paul's trip to Haiti to operate on the eyes of over 200 children. There are also the so-called mistakes that led to emergency warning systems being activated in both Hawaii and Japan. In an interview with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos, Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard explained how she was able to verify that there was no threat within 12 minutes of the alarm sounding, while it took authorities almost 40 minutes to inform the public. She also shared some surprising thoughts as to why North Korea has its missiles.
We've got to understand why Kim Jong-un is saying he's not going to give up his nuclear weapons. Our country's history of regime change wars has led countries like North Korea to develop and hold on to these nuclear weapons because they see it as their only deterrent against regime change. And this is what's important for President Trump to recognize. It is critical that we end our policies of regime change wars to provide that credible guarantee that the United States is not going to go in and topple the North Korean regime so that these conversations can begin towards denuclearization.
Just to be clear, are you saying that Kim Jong-un's nuclear arsenal is our fault?
What I'm saying is that Democrat and Republican administrations for decades, going back over 20 years, failed to recognize the seriousness of this threat, failed to remove it. And we know that North Korea has these nuclear weapons because they see how the United States in Libya, for example, guaranteed Gaddafi, we're not going to go after you. You should get rid of your nuclear weapons. He did. Then we went and led an attack that toppled Gaddafi, launching Libya into chaos that we are still seeing the results of today. North Korea sees what we did in Iraq with Saddam Hussein, with those false reports of weapons of mass destruction, and now seeing in Iran how President Trump is decertifying a nuclear deal that prevented Iran from developing their nuclear weapons, threatening the very existence and the agreement that was made. So yes, we've got to understand North Korea is holding on to these nuclear weapons because they think it is their only protection from the United States coming in and doing to them what the United States has done to so many countries throughout history.
Was it a mistake for the United States to take out Gaddafi and Hussein?
It was, absolutely.
At least one source has speculated that real missiles were launched and that they were stopped by one of several secret space programs, or possibly even from the involvement of the galactic families. In his article, Dr. Michael Salla of exopolitics.org offers his arguments for why this might be the case, and he includes this. writing that what adds credibility to this alternative scenario are photos of a number of UFOs seen over Hawaii 31 minutes after the second emergency alert. The photos show UFOs that display an advanced technology that may be craft belonging to a U.S. Air Force-run secret space program that has broken away from deep state control. Sala offers an additional perspective that China launched a missile from one of its own submarines. For any logical thinker, this makes absolutely no sense. China is on the verge of replacing the U.S. dollar as a global reserve currency. China has nothing to gain, and in fact everything to lose in launching a nuclear missile. China and the East are building up a new economic paradigm, and there is no reason to destroy all of that with a world-ending nuclear launch. It is also highly unlikely that it would be North Korea either, since it is now being reported that North and South Korea will stand together during the upcoming Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, Korea. Talks are ongoing between North and South Korea that are giving some a reason for hope for new relations between the two Koreas. For the majority of listeners, all of these events would suggest that we are being distracted from other events unfolding. What might a few of these possibilities be? As you will hear a bit later, we have the planned launch sometime this week of the petro-yuan, which could pull more countries away from using the U.S. dollar in global trade. We have the possibility of a government shutdown looming by tomorrow, January 20th. Bill Clinton was forced earlier to publicly deny that funds from the Clinton Foundation were used to pay for the wedding of his daughter Chelsea. But then WikiLeaks blew this into the open by releasing an email with proof that Clinton did know that funds were being used to pay for her wedding. WikiLeaks has released more information relating to the Clinton Foundation's relating to funds stolen from financial aid donated to Haiti that never made it to the country. Joshua Kaplan, writing for thegatewaypundit.com on January 18th, adds this. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton warned on Tuesday that a tsunami of information exposing Obama-Clinton deep state scandals will soon be released. We have the deepening investigation of the Clinton Foundation that may expose many other national governments that gave money to the Clinton Foundation, no doubt done without the informed democratic consent of voters in those countries. According to an article on the Discerning the Mystery website on January 15th, the Clintons and their minions are in deep, deep trouble. The indictments have begun. According to new posts by this source called Q, the strings have been cut. Highest levels. The puppet masters have been removed. There are no deals. There is no escape. Recently, on USAWatchdog.com with Greg Hunter, former CIA agent Kevin Shipp shared this information.
Let's break this down. As a former counterintelligence officer, this is just shocking. If you break it all down, what happened was the DNC paid somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 million to a former, if there is such a thing, British intelligence officer, Christopher Steele, to gather information from second and third party sources. But it turns out these sources were Russian intelligence officials. So they gathered information from paid Russian intelligence officials. John McCain acted as the courier, had it couriered back to the FBI and to the CIA, presented it to both of them. John Brennan leaked the information, calling it intelligence. The FBI, it looks like, used the information to get their FISA warrants to do the spying via the NSA on the Trump cabinet and transition team. So while the FBI colluded on the inside to cover up Hillary's crimes, really, and then go after the Trump collusion narrative. So this is shocking, probably, I think, one of the most shocking internal events of an internal attack on the president, maybe since JFK, I don't know, but it's very serious.
I mean, a lot of people are going to go to jail over this, are they not? I mean, Trump has turned the tide, if I'm getting this right, and they are on the run. Is that correct?
Yes. Oh, they're terrified. Yeah, they are terrified right now. They did not expect Trump to do what he's doing when he came inside. The reason they've been trying to get him even before he was elected is they knew He was uncontrollable, impartial, and if he got in there, they wouldn't be able to manipulate him. And that's exactly what's happening. And there are some people, no doubt about it, running scared right now, not just because of the dossier, but obviously other things that have happened now that Trump and hopefully Sessions as well are looking into these things. This is serious. It could result in somewhat of a constitutional crisis.
Well, and what do you mean by that?
You've got the FBI and the Department of Justice conspiring against the sitting president of the United States, and before that, a president elect. You have FBI agents writing fraudulent affidavits to get NSA FISA warrants to spy on a political opponent, in this case of Hillary Clinton, things that are an unbelievable abuse of power by the secret parts of our government. And I worked a lot with FBI agents when I was handling espionage cases and CIA officers. And I worked with some tremendous, wonderful FBI agents and CIA officers. This sort of darkness and garbage doesn't happen until you get up into the supervisory levels, high levels. That's where this dark stuff goes on. The people down at lower levels are good, hardworking law enforcement men and women, intelligence professionals, most of them very good people. This stuff goes on up at the higher levels.
Comey's got to go to jail over this. Am I wrong?
Yeah, he should. He covered up an espionage crimes on behalf of Hillary Clinton. He leaked information intentionally to the news media about his discussions with the President of the United States. And, Comey goes all the way back to sitting on the board of Lockheed Martin, which is one of the surveillance companies used by the U.S. government. He received $6 million a year there. He was on the board of HSBC Bank, which is laundering money from Central America. I mean, James Comey goes back in the deep state and the shadow government for decades and has been connected to Hillary Clinton. So he's just being the same leopard with the same spots.
Mueller investigation. And I've heard from one of my sources that Mueller is basically just doing a show investigation. But to me, it seems like he's out to get Trump. Isn't that treason? Didn't he let the Russians have uranium-1?
He was part of the committee, and he approved it. Yes, he was there when it happened. He approved it happening. They all claimed that none of the uranium left the United States, but in reality it did. Some of it even went to Asia. Who knows where else it went? And that could be considered treasonous. And let's remember, too, that it was Robert Mueller who presided over after 9/11, the new FBI warrantless search program, where they broke into Americans' houses without a warrant. He lied under oath 3 times, said they'd only done it 47 times. Well, they presented more evidence. I think they got him up to 200. Eventually, they got him up to 4,000 times the FBI had broken into Americans' houses without a warrant. And finally, they asked him, listen, can you give us the real number? And his response was, amazingly, he could not remember how many times the FBI had broken into an American's house without a warrant. That is the same Robert Mueller. And the talks that I give are on the shadow government, which is the secret agencies of our government that function outside the Constitution. They do things without the knowledge of Congress. They engage in unconstitutional activity all the time. That would be the CIA and the NSA and the FBI. And they have got a lot of skeletons in the closet. When they heard that Donald Trump was even getting close to running, the former directors of the CIA, James Clapper, Michael Hayden, all came out, started calling him names, a useful fool, and other things that former directors of the agency never have done. Once he got in, now they're terrified because there are a lot of skeletons in the closet at the FBI, at the CIA, illegal things that they have done. And they are terrified that Trump is going to be the first president since JFK that's going to start digging into some of these things and finding some of these skeletons. And if that were to happen, there would be some major hearings and some people probably would go to jail and probably should go to jail.
Those comments by Ship point to the possibility that one of the biggest reasons for all the distractions is another revelation coming this week. Zero Hedge reported on January 18th that all hell is breaking loose in Washington, D.C. after a 4-page memo detailing extensive FISA court abuse was made available to the entire House of Representatives on Thursday. The contents of the memo are so explosive, says journalist Sarah Carter, that it could lead to the removal of senior officials in the FBI and the Department of Justice and the end of Robert Mueller's special counsel investigation. The report reveals extensive abuse of power and highly illegal collusion between the Obama administration, the FBI, the Department of Justice, and the Clinton campaign against Donald Trump and his team during and after the 2016 presidential election. Republican politician Matt Gaetz has been quoted as saying that not only will the release of this memo result in Department of Justice firings, but people will go to jail. As always, anytime the mainstream media is focusing excessively on stories that are seemingly less important, the question has to be what they are attempting to distract us from knowing. In other geopolitical news, an article by Seraphim Hanish on the Duran on January 17th suggests that elitist George Soros is recommitting himself to destroying nationalism. According to Hanish, George Soros pledged he would renew his fight against the ideology of nationalism, admitting at the same time that the experiment of the European Union is near breaking down. Reported on January 15th by Breitbart News, the billionaire currency speculator was quoted by the Financial Times as saying, "It's déjà vu all over again with one big change. The dominant ideology in the world now is nationalism. It's the EU that's the institution that's on the verge of a breakdown, and Russia is the resurgent power based on nationalism." The article goes into more depth about Soros himself and how he is a dreadfully practical thinker, which in this case is not entirely positive. His mission seems philanthropic, but this is also part of the trap. Hanish writes that the idea that the nation-state would be the primary way of governance rather than a global community is repugnant enough that 87-year-old Soros put $18 billion of his own wealth into the Open Society foundations to further the crusade he thinks is so important. His Open Society Foundation promotes causes that on the surface often look to be quite compassionate and kind, but in reality these policy directions promote decay and death. The reason for this is simply because they are based in the theological framework of secular humanism. And this is why Soros's Open Society Foundation seems so irresistible to the Western thinker. Everything about its policy points from drug use, normalization, to acceptance of sexual deviances, to the elimination of nationalism, all seem like the practical next steps in the progress of human society, from a rough, primitive, nationalist, traditionalist, restricted worldview to one that is, quote-unquote, enlightened and, quote-unquote, with the times, and, quote-unquote, synchronized to the reality of the human spirit. Of course, we are also witnessing the negative consequences of Soros's attacks on nationalism. At this time, we are witnessing the internal collapse of Sweden. A Zero Hedge article on January 18th reports that for the first time since World War II, Sweden is preparing to distribute a civil defense brochure to some 4.7 million households, warning them about the onset of war. The booklet will serve as a manual of total defense in case of a war and provide details on how to secure the basic needs such as water, food, and heating, the FT reported. The manual also covers other threats such as cyber attacks, terrorism, and climate change. All of society needs to be prepared for conflict, not just the military. We haven't been using words such as total defense or high alert for 25 to 30 years or more, so the knowledge among citizens is very low, said Christina Andersson, head of the project at the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency. The Swedish Prime Minister, Stefan Löfven, has admitted that something is very wrong in the country. He was quoted as saying that we could deploy the army to tackle gang criminality in Sweden. The comment was made in reference to waves of gang-related violence situated in over an estimated 50 or more no-go zones in Sweden, where police, fire, and ambulance personnel will not go. So the threat does not appear to be external, such as blaming Russia. Rather, the threat is now more of an internal matter, and that the country is on the brink of potential social collapse and civil war. There are people being forced into European countries funded by organizations such as George Soros's Open Society Foundation, and they are to destabilize countries and break down the nationalistic thinking. Sweden's murder rate is going up, and police officers are resigning more and more because of the situation. One only has to look more recently to Ukraine as another country destroyed by Western hegemony and elitist unelected leadership. According to an article on the Signs of the Times website from January 12th, the Oliver Stone documentary made a couple of years ago is now available in the West. The article writes that the Maidan massacre in early 2014 triggered a bloody uprising that ousted President Viktor Yanukovych and spurred Crimeans to secede and join Russia and sparked a civil war in eastern Ukraine. Russia was portrayed by Western media as the perpetrator and has been sanctioned and widely condemned as such. But was Russia responsible for what happened? Ukraine on Fire provides a historical perspective for the deep divisions in the region which led to the 2004 Orange Revolution, the 2014 uprisings, and the violent overthrow of democratically elected Yanukovych. Covered by Western media as a popular revolution, it was, in fact, a coup d'etat, scripted and staged by ultra-nationalist groups and the U.S. State Department. Investigative journalist Robert Perry reveals how U.S.-funded political NGOs and media companies have emerged since the 1980s, replacing the CIA in promoting America's geopolitical agenda abroad. Executive producer Olive Stone gained unprecedented access to the inside story through his on-camera interviews with former President Yanukovych and Minister of Internal Affairs Vitaly Zakharchenko, who explain how the U.S. ambassador and factions in Washington actively plotted for regime change. In the show transcript, I will include links to two documentaries, one being the documentary by Oliver Stone and another one describing Ukraine's fight for freedom in 2015, for those seeking a greater understanding of these events. A third link will offer the Russian translation for Stone's documentary. In financial news, the Western business media, its pundits, and others are trying very hard to play up the so-called strength of the U.S. dollar. Is the U.S. economy really as strong as the pundits claim? As I am seeing it, there could be both a yes and no answer to this question. If someone is believing that, yes, the U.S. economy really is strong, then they are the ones stuck in a rapidly dying financial paradigm because they see a currency that is backed by nothing being propped up as a global reserve while the rest of the world is beginning to shun the U.S. dollar. The answer is more realistically no, because it is becoming increasingly more evident, even if the mainstream media are not saying it, that Russia and China are forcing a new economic paradigm upon the world. And this has exposed the lies, frauds, and crimes of the fiat currency system that Western bankers and politicians have used for the last century or so to pad their pockets and their lifestyles. We have to keep in mind a few key facts. Considering the average lifespan of global reserve currencies historically, the U.S. dollar has now reached and passed that average lifespan. It is overdue for collapse and replacement. The U.S. dollar is a fiat currency that is backed up by nothing. The U.S. stock markets are believed to be hyperinflated. It is possible that this is because of a formerly secretive part of the Fed Reserve called the Emergency Stabilization Fund, or ESF, that uses the phenomenal resources of this fund to allegedly buy up all the U.S. Treasury debt bonds that countries are now beginning to sell because they no longer see value in the U.S. dollar. To avoid markets crashing, it is believed that ESF funds buy back the bonds. China and Russia are actively moving forward in creating a new economic paradigm based on global trade that does not involve the U.S. dollar, but instead will involve gold-backed currencies and gold trading via the new Shanghai Gold Index, and a strong economic initiative also called the Belt and Road Initiative. A Zero Hedge article reported on January 16th that, in its latest reminder that China is a, for now, happy holder of some $1.2 trillion in U.S. treasuries, Chinese credit rating agency Dagong downgraded U.S. sovereign ratings from A- to BBB+ overnight, citing deficiencies in U.S. political ecology and tax cuts that directly reduce the federal government's sources of debt repayment, weakening the base of the government's debt repayment. Oh, and just to make sure, the article continues, the message is heard loud and clear. The ratings, which are now level with those of Peru, Colombia, and Turkmenistan on the Beijing-based agency's scale of credit worthiness, have also been put on a negative outlook. In a statement on Tuesday, Dagong warned that the United States' increasing reliance on debt to drive development would erode its solvency. Quoted by Reuters, Dagong made specific reference to President Trump's tax package, which is estimated to add $1.4 trillion over a decade to the $20 trillion national debt burden. Deficiencies in the current U.S. political ecology make it difficult for the efficient administration of the federal government, so the national economic development derails from the right track, Dagong said, adding that massive tax cuts directly reduce the federal government's sources of debt repayment, therefore further weakening the base of government's debt repayment. China seems to be sending very visible and very serious messages to those controlling the U.S. economy and generally the Western economy by downgrading the U.S. just days before the apparent launching of the petro-yuan. China appears to be betting that this could be the nail that puts an end to criminal banking via corrupted financial institutions. Reading between the lines, the wording suggests that China, along with its partners in the BRICS alliance and throughout Eurasia, are now ready to flip a switch and begin a transition from the U.S. oil fiat system of banking to a system that includes the Chinese yuan and is backed by gold. Iran is mixed up in this also. As one of the remaining countries without a Rothschild-controlled central bank, one can begin to understand why Iran is being targeted. The U.S. is hinting at putting sanctions back on Iran, thinking that it will do harm to the country. As the U.S. is discovering, however, sanctions that may have worked in the past to pummel a country into economic surrender no longer work, as Russia is leading the way in demonstrating that U.S. sanctions become a force for action that moves a country away from dependence on the U.S. dollar. RT reported on January 9th how unilateral U.S. sanctions on Iran could simply force Iran to move immediately to oil futures based in Chinese yuan instead of U.S. dollars. Could this be a possibility? If you were faced with a choice to allow your out-of-control car to slam into a group of children or risk going over a cliff, which choice would you make? Most would probably sacrifice themselves for the higher good. Now, hold on with me for a moment. Imagine a leader who is fully aware that the world has been too dependent on his country's criminally corrupted financial system. He sees what is happening in his country, and he's trying to get the other countries out of harm's way by pushing them towards the east. As those countries break away more from the U.S. can begin to allow its currency to be replaced, and the country can begin to make itself great again by breaking away from all the political and economic attachments of other countries. Being great again may mean having to be more humble on the global stage. For those who are following the cryptocurrency markets, there probably were some very nervous people and some very excited people watching the price of Bitcoin drop to almost 50% of its value in the past week. After bottoming out somewhere around the US $9,500 mark, it has since begun to rise again. For those waiting for the price to drop, this could be the opportunity to get back in, but there is some news this week that some may want to consider. An article by Molly Jane Zuckerman for Cointelegraph on January 15th reports that January 13th marked an important milestone for Bitcoin when 16.8 million Bitcoins, or 80% of the entire Bitcoin supply, were mined. This means only 4.2 million bitcoins, or 20%, are left to mine until Bitcoin's 21 million supply cap is reached. BTC, or Bitcoin, contains the 21 million cap built into its protocol by Satoshi Nakamoto, first mentioned in their 2008 white paper as a way to introduce digital scarcity to cryptocurrency. With such a cap in place, the more bitcoins are mined, the more scarcity is produced on the market. Scarcity arguably creates demand, which in turn makes the coins more valuable. Once 21 million bitcoins have been mined, it will become even harder to obtain them, and also potentially making each coin more valuable. What this is going to mean in the not-so-distant future is not quite clear. As we have learned from the global cabal bankers, each time they increase the money supply through their practice of legalized counterfeiting, called quantitative easing, the value of a currency is depreciated each time that happens. We also know from some companies that have done what is called a stock split, where more shares are created. It is unclear whether or not either option could be in the cards for Bitcoin in the future, or whether or not these solutions could work for Bitcoin the way it works in the fiat currency world. Another article by Zuckerman on the 18th reports that co-founder and fund stat strategist Tom Lee predicted that Bitcoin will hit 25,000 by the end of this year in an interview with CNBC on January 18th. Lee had previously forecasted that BTC would only reach that mark of 25,000 by 2022. I feel that it is also important to keep in mind that the cryptocurrency game may also be a trap to get more people attached to the digital money world so that people can no longer use cash. An article by a guest author on Cointelegraph on the 18th, he or she reports that the common question you hear from any doubter of digital currencies and their future in our world is, what is the use case? Often people look at Bitcoin and see its shortcomings as a medium of transfer and use that as a justification for being short digital currencies. Spending Bitcoin or any other digital currency is not currently all that easy. It takes time to convert back into fiat currency, and there is often a large fee. Singapore-based company PayCent aims to make it easier for buyers and sellers to use their digital currency. Right now, they are in the process of releasing the integrated debit card, which gives customers the capability to unlock their funds instantly. The article continues. The overall goal of the company is to make it possible for mobile and cashless payments to be accepted anywhere. Blockchain is the underlying technology that enables this advancement, and the team has worked hard to bridge the gap between fiat and digital currencies. The new PayCent integrated debit card is the key to bringing digital currencies into our day-to-day life. It has no yearly maintenance fees if the card is active and in use. You don't need to hold a PYN token to get it. A user will pay only one-time fees for card activation and delivery with any digital currency. The article tries to create the advantages of this type of program, and there are some advantages for sure. Having quick access to one's coins is key. The article does note that PayCent's end goal is to help users worldwide enter the cashless world. The true potential of a company like this comes from the fact that it can create an infrastructure that users who have never had access to banks will be able to engage with. Another story points out that the next part of this currency evolution is happening, and this is the formation of cryptocurrency lending institutions. A Cointelegraph article on January 18th reports that peer-to-peer fintech startup CoinLoan recently rolled out the first version of their revolutionary peer-to-peer lending platform. Investors were thrilled with the results and are eagerly awaiting the end of the ICO and listing on the exchanges coming soon after. CoinLoan has also recently enabled direct fiat investment in their ICO. The main benefits for investors are that they avoid the volatility of using crypto, and they no longer need to use exchanges to buy crypto to invest. This unique option enables investments of $5,000 or more in US dollars or euro in exchange for CLT tokens. That would be the coin loan token, it appears. Coin loan solves a very real challenge facing crypto owners. Currently, if a crypto investor has a large holding in Bitcoin and needs fiat currency, there is no simple option for them to borrow against these assets. Coin Loan has created a system of secured peer-to-peer lending where borrowers deposit various crypto assets for a loan in their preferred fiat currency. If the borrower doesn't repay according to the terms agreed by both parties, Coin Loan liquidates the pledged crypto asset to ensure the terms are fulfilled, returning the remaining funds to the lender. There are significant advantages for both borrowers and lenders by entering into this type of arrangement. Lenders get a low-risk way of earning interest on their capital and significantly reducing cryptocurrency volatility risk. Meanwhile, borrowers get to leverage their crypto assets without liquidating and staying leveraged for future gains, while also giving them a range of options for future tax payments. Using this method, there are no additional exchange commissions to buy cryptocurrency, and funds are very easily transferred to and from a traditional bank account or credit card. Being mindful of all this may help to keep people grounded who choose to purchase Bitcoins. Use the game for whatever you can get out of it, and then bring your money back. Avoid becoming too greedy, otherwise one might get burned. Of course, never put more money in than one can reasonably afford to lose. In some general news, with an attempt to keep things a bit on the lighter side, we have this week received the winners of the Fake News Awards. With more on the analysis of this, here is Mark Dice with his interpretation.
President Trump released the winners of the Fake News Awards yesterday, a list of 11 of the top fake news stories of 2017, which has already triggered the fake news, making them upset, which is going to cause them to just publish more fake news. Before I go through the list, let's take a quick look at the reaction from some of the fake news media. Bloomberg says that the Fake News Awards have a sinister subtext. They're sinister. The Washington Compost is upset that Fox News' morning show Fox and Friends is covering the Fake News Awards, saying that they are promoting it. Newsweek appears to be happy that they made the list, bragging in this tweet that they came in 8th place. The list is published by the Republican National Committee on their website, GOP.com, and it got so many visitors that the website crashed, but luckily I was able to access it. So here it is. The first award goes to the New York Times for claiming on Election Day, after President Trump won, that the economy would never recover. Next, we have ABC News for Brian Ross falsely reporting that Michael Flynn admitted that President Trump directed him to contact the Russians during the campaign, causing the stock market to drop 400 points. And then they had to embarrassingly issue an apology and a correction, and then Brian Ross was suspended for a month. Next on the list is CNN, the Clown News Network, for falsely reporting that candidate Donald Trump and his son Donald Trump Jr. were given advanced access to the WikiLeaks documents from the hacked emails from the DNC, when in fact they were given a heads up after they were already published and everybody already knew about them. Then we have that Time magazine reporter who falsely claimed that President Trump just removed the bust of Martin Luther King from the Oval Office because he's just an evil racist who hates black people on his first day as the president last year. It turns out that someone was just standing in front of it and you couldn't see the bust behind them from the photo that he had seen. A lot of these I've already covered on this channel, so you may be familiar with them, or you may have seen other people debunk them, like the Washington Compost reporter David Weigel, who posted a photo of Trump's Pensacola rally early December, hours before it even started, and then said that it was completely empty. Or like when the Clown News Network deceptively edited that video when President Trump was meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan to give the impression that he may have put the lives of fish at risk by dumping the whole box of fish food in the koi pond. Or like the 3 employees at the Clown News Network having to resign and issue the retraction about one of their many fake stories on the Russian ties after Anthony Scaramucci threatened to sue them for defamation. Newsweek falsely reported that the First Lady of Poland just wouldn't shake President Trump's hand when he went to visit when, well, here's a photo of her doing exactly that. Oh, what do you know? Another one from CNN. This time from when they falsely reported that the FBI Director James Comey was going to testify that he never told President Trump that he wasn't personally under investigation, when, of course, again, that turned out to be 100% false. The New York Times falsely claiming on their front page that the Trump administration, once they assumed office, hid the Obama administration's report on climate change on the government's website. And of course, the fakest story from 2017, and who knows, this one might win again this year, is the Russia collusion conspiracy theories.
Mark Dice has written a book, The True Story of Fake News, How Mainstream Media Manipulates Millions, and is available through Amazon for those interested in reading this book. Over to some technology news, although this technology is perhaps more natural compared to other more futuristic technologies. Considering the future has to, by its very nature, consider the planet upon which we live and that sustains us, any future, not including the planet, really is no future at all. Humans are going to need to learn how to live in a different way, and to perhaps also make use of land that has previously not been occupied because it is considered more hostile to some humans. In the north of Canada, people are taking it upon themselves to learn how to grow food because many of the traditional sources of food have been reduced to dangerous levels, and it is too expensive to fly unhealthy Western-produced foods up to the northern communities. An article by Christine Lofgren on the Inhabitat website on January 15th writes that tucked inside the lush boreal forest in Canada's Northwest Territories, you'll find something unexpected. There, cheek to jowl with the ever-encroaching trees, sits a thriving farm with snuffling pigs, lush fruit trees, and acres of vegetables, all in an environment that is anything but hospitable to agriculture. But creating a flourishing regenerative landscape perfect for establishing local food security is exactly what the Northern Farm Training Institute is all about. Their goal is to help people form their own holistic growing environments to support healthy, food-secure communities, even if they happen to be located above the 60th parallel. According to Lofgren, the Northern Farm Training Institute, NFTI, was founded in 2013 as a way to train people in isolated communities how to grow their own food and to restore northern environment-based food systems. Since then, the farm has taught 147 people from over 30 communities, half of those from First Nations, Métis, and Inuvialuit communities, to create their own farms. NFTI grew as Jackie Milk, a local Hay River Métis woman, recognized the need to alleviate food insecurity in local communities. She quickly realized that there was a large demand for this type of learning, and the 260-acre farm has since hosted 30 intensive workshops in what they call a living classroom. The farm consists of outdoor gardens, a hoop greenhouse, a geodesic dome greenhouse. On the farm lives herds of sheep, cattle, pigs, goats, and chickens, with an animal barn, industrial kitchen, and farm store. There are also 10 small yurts that act as student housing and 1 large yurt for classroom learning. All of this is surrounded by nearby Hay River, fields, forests, and ponds. The NFTI is completely organic, focusing on holistic and regenerative practices that contribute to longer-term health of both land and wildlife. Practices used support biodiversity and soil health as well. Produce being thrown out by local grocery stores is used to feed the pigs. Now, just because it is a northern climate does not mean that they are not busy in the winter. The article writes that in the fall they teach wool washing, felting, and dyeing. Pigs are used to help clear land for farming, and sheep help weed and fertilize pasture areas. They also work with animals that are more comfortable in colder climates, like Iceland sheep and yaks, rather than the Rambouillet sheep and Angus cattle so familiar in the U.S. During the winter, with just 6 daylight hours, aurora borealis overhead, and a sunset at 3:45 p.m., the Northern Farm Training Institute doesn't sit back and take January off. They grow seedlings inside their greenhouses using snow to water the plants. The sunlight bouncing off the snow outside creates an ideal lighting effect for the growing plants. And the farm collects and uses discarded shredded paper from local communities to keep the animals warm. They also teach cheese-making classes and food storage classes. According to the website for the NFTI, the NFTI is a non-profit society created by local Métis and northern farming expert Jackie Milne in 2013. We operate on a 260-acre campus in Hay River, Northwest Territories. We provide immersive farm training to people committed to improving local food systems. Our vision is to be a holistic farm and educational center to genuinely empower people to transform their lives. We will support a vibrant, regenerative landscape while building productive local farms and thriving, healthy communities. NFTI is dedicated to helping promote and teach various new methodologies for sustainable and regenerative agriculture that are being practiced around the world. We teach a unique application of these food production systems that are tailored to northern, small-scaled, highly productive farming that are a part of a new trend in job creation and self-employed careers. This includes bio-intensive vegetable gardening, greenhouse systems, permaculture, food storage, and value-added techniques and holistic planned grazing with livestock. It's not a lifestyle that is for everyone. But those who are truly into nature and ready to escape the rat race of what is happening around the world at this time, there are practices in place to help people who not only want to survive but also thrive in a northern climate. In the show transcript, along with the links for this story, I will also include a link to a story about hydroponic farming and 6 places where soil-less farming is revolutionizing how we grow food. But, like some of you perhaps, I had read this article somewhere that within certain fruit seeds there is cyanide and that we are warned to never eat the seeds. For some time, I was concerned about this, but the thought kept coming back to me that nature would not create something to be consumed if there was a significant danger in it. If there was cyanide present, I really wanted to believe that there would be a reason and purpose for it, and that it would not represent the danger that some were claiming. An article I have come across this week puts my mind more at ease and feels accurate to me, at least at this time. The article, by Paul Fassa and posted on the Organic Wellness website, writes that all you have to do is Google cyanide alongside any of the foods mentioned above, and you'll get a plethora of articles that all support the cyanide dangers from those seeds and nuts. Some say that your body quickly detoxes the compounds containing cyanide. Others say that you will get free cyanide when your body metabolizes those compounds. Most concede, however, that it would take a heck of a lot of pits, seeds, or bitter almonds to poison you. But as the saying goes, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. In this case, the fear of fruit seeds and bitter almonds and other nuts is based on incomplete data. The compound containing cyanide is called amygdalin. Fassa refers to an article appearing on the Sydney Morning Herald in Australia in 2010 where a man cured himself of cancer by taking apricot seeds. He writes, "They didn't die from cyanide poisoning. They were cured without negative side effects. This wasn't accomplished by consuming a couple every week, but dozens daily for months. Fassa explains why they were not poisoned. He states that amygdalin compound has 4 molecules. 2 are glucose molecules, the other 2 are cyanide and benzaldehyde. The last 2 are scary compounds, except for a couple of unusual metabolic activities. They are released by and into cancer cells only. Otherwise, they remain in the amygdalin compound and are passed through. It's a very clever arrangement. The cancer cells depend on fermenting sugar or glucose for their energy instead of oxygen. So the cancer cells attract the amygdalin compounds for their glucose, but are whacked when they metabolize those compounds that free the benzaldehyde and cyanide. The glucose is the sugar bait. Cancer cells contain an enzyme that is not found in healthy cells, beta-glucosidase. The beta-glucosidase enzyme unlocks the amygdalin compound, releasing the deadly toxins within the cancer cell. Only cancer cells metabolize amygdalin. Healthy, normal cells do not. Most non-cancerous cells contain another enzyme, rhodinase, and free cyanide molecules are bound to sulfur molecules by rhodinase, creating harmless cyanates that are eliminated in the urine. This is the little bit of knowledge that those scary articles reference when they say a little bit of cyanide is easily detoxed by your body. But the complete function of amygdalin is hidden because the fact that laetrile or B17, a concentrated extract from apricot amygdalins, can cure cancer, that is taboo. The article offers a bit of history on laetrile, or what we commonly know as B or vitamin B17. The article writes that B17 was developed by San Francisco researcher Dr. Ernst Krebs in 1952 by liquefying and purifying amygdalin from apricot seeds so it could be injected into cancer patients. Dr. Krebs injected himself to assure laetrile's safety, and Dr. John Richardson proved its efficacy by curing several cancer patients in San Francisco with laetrile. In 1971, laetrile was banned. Dr. Richardson called on investigative journalist G. Edward Griffin to publicize the merits of laetrile or B17 derived from apricot seeds. Griffin discovered that the Sloan Kettering Institute's laetrile trials leading to the FDA ban were bogus. Sloan Kettering spokesperson Dr. Ralph Moss refused to lie about laetrile and left Sloan Kettering in disgust. He slipped Griffin unpublished or unpublicized papers scientifically proving laetrile actually worked. This led to Griffin's book, A World Without Cancer, where you can read much more about the amygdalin cancer-curing story. The article closes with the reminder to anyone seeking to treat cancer that one is to avoid consuming sugar while doing any cancer-related treatment. This information feels accurate to me, but of course one must do one's own research to determine if any alternative health solution is right for that one individual. In the show transcript for this story, I will include 2 videos with more supporting information about this story. For those who are longtime dissenters of vaccines and seeking information to support their position, the following story may be beneficial to some. A posting on a social media page led me to a study that shows overwhelming evidence that unvaccinated children are better off than vaccinated children. The survey is looking at numerous different conditions, including atopic diseases such as asthma, hay fever, and neurodermatitis. Also, they look at ADS, hyperactivity, autism, sleep disorders, migraines and concentration problems, herpes, warts, polyps, fungal infections, diabetes, epilepsy, seizures, neurological and autoimmune diseases, and also thyroid disorders, dyslexia, depression, anxiety, celiac disease, gluten sensitivity, acid reflux, motor skills issues, scoliosis, and more. The results showed that unvaccinated children and people had lower incidence of those conditions just stated. From the same webpage, here are a few quotes from people who have completed the survey. One person wrote, "I am 27 years old and am completely unvaccinated. I am very healthy and only get a cold maybe once every year or two." Another wrote that I am one of 10 children from the same mother and father. None of us were vaccinated. Our ages are 38 to 59. We were all allowed to have childhood diseases to boost our immune systems. Most of all, none of the non-vaccinated children in our family have major illness. A third shares that my first child has the most vaccines, the second has some, the last had none. The overall healthiest with the least problems is the one who got no vaccines. I have my master's degree in nursing. I read all sorts of stuff because I really wanted to believe vaccines are safe and okay, but they are not. So my intensive research swayed me the other way. Finally, there is this testimony. Jay is our 8th child and the first to remain almost completely undamaged by the medical system. We did not even allow any newborn testing, such as PKU and so on, nor did we allow a hearing screening or vitamin K or even the antibiotics in the eyes. He did not leave our sight in the hospital because we did not trust the nurses to respect our desire to protect him from testing and vaccines and so on. In fact, we would have avoided the hospital altogether if I did not have to deliver by C-section. Jay is more alert and healthier than any of our other children. He is almost 2 and has not needed medical care yet. He is rarely sick and has never had an ear infection. According to the web page, this is an ongoing survey. There are links on the page to 2 different surveys. One survey is for individuals who are not vaccinated or whose children have not been vaccinated. The other survey is for individuals who have been vaccinated or whose children have been vaccinated. If you would like to share or report on what vaccinations have or have not done for you, these links will appear in the show transcript as well for this story. The individual who posted this information wrote, "Finally, we have definitive, undeniable proof that the pharmaceutical propaganda of the vaccines are safe, that we've had to listen to spewing forth from the mouths of doctors and journalists and politicians for decades, is categorically and unequivocally false. Finally, we have something that can bring anti-vaccine and pro-vaccine people together, united against our common enemy. The real, clear, and present danger to our children, the pharmaceutical industry." The article closes with a quote from Marcia Angel, former editor of the New England Journal of Medicine and author of the book The Truth About the Drug Companies, How They Deceive Us and What to Do About It. According to Angel, similar conflicts of interest and biases exist in virtually every field of medicine, particularly those that rely heavily on drugs or devices. It is simply no longer possible to believe much of the clinical research that is published, or to rely on the judgment of trusted physicians or authoritative medical guidelines. I take no pleasure in this conclusion, which I reached slowly and reluctantly over my 2 decades as an editor of the New England Journal of Medicine. As more informed people begin presenting information like this to their physicians, perhaps they, the physicians, will finally start getting the message that their failure in compromising their Hippocratic oath to the pressures of Big Pharma will no longer be tolerated. In this week's final words, I'm choosing to hand things over this week to Greg Prescott from the in5d.com news website. Like so many of us, Greg has felt the challenges of trying to make a living while serving humanity and the planet. And also, like so many of us, he continues on. And I'd like to try to help him a bit by giving him an opportunity to share on this newscast. Greg makes references to a few items, and those links will be in the show transcript with more information as well as ways to follow Greg's and In5D's postings. Create a fantastic week until our next moment of now. Here is Greg Prescott.
Namaste, everyone. My name is Greg Prescott from in5d.com. Many of us are witnessing what is called the quickening. And what that means is that a lot of us are noticing that it feels like time is speeding up and manifestations are happening quicker and quicker, faster than ever before. Terence McKenna spoke about this in his time wave zero theory, where he said that time was speeding up faster and faster as we spiraled towards the singularity. Ian Lungold also had his own view on this, saying that it wasn't necessarily time that was speeding up, but our consciousness was speeding up. And that brings us to a valid point. What is real? My interpretation of what is real is basically how I'm experiencing this reality through my consciousness. Ultimately, we are simply consciousness experiencing this reality. We're basically within the dream right now. Our waking hours are within the dream, and that's why it seems like for many of us, our dreams are more real than our waking lives in this third-dimensional reality. I know it's hard for a lot of people to wrap their minds around that, but we are in this third-dimensional matrix, but we're simply consciousness experiencing everything in this third-dimensional reality matrix. We invite other people into our reality to experience this as their own consciousness, and then we co-create with one another. And as real as everything seems right now, none of it's real, yet it's real because we are experiencing this as our own consciousness, both individual consciousness and the collective consciousness. An interesting aspect of what many of us are experiencing within this conscious co-creation is what's called Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, and it stays there until the year 2023. Pluto is known as the destroyer and will tear down everything that's not in humanity's best interests. And we're seeing that already with the demise of money, government, and religion. The last time Pluto was in Capricorn was during both the French and American revolutions. And if you look around, there's been revolutions going on all around the world. What we're seeing right now is the collapse of money, government, and religion as the swamp is being drained and the truth is rising to the surface. This is exactly what Pluto in Capricorn does. When Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, here in the United States, we saw a collapse of the banking system, with the exception of the too big to fail / jail banks. And that happened right on schedule. As a matter of fact, I made a video on my In5D YouTube channel that is entitled Banking Collapse Announces the Beginning of the Golden Age. And it was from that point forward that we started to see the changes that have snowballed into what we're witnessing right now as the human collective, with whistleblowers such as Eric Snowden and Julian Assange coming out and exposing numerous crimes against humanity by those in power, commonly referred to as the cabal. And even more recently, we see the whistleblower QAnon coming out and giving us inside information. Before things happen, he's letting us know, heads up, watch out for this, beware of false flags, and a plethora of numerous other distractions that are in our everyday lives. We've seen the corruption of the media, the mainstream shithole media, and how that's been used as a tool against us. And now the truth is rising to the surface. Now that we're well past the midway point of Pluto being in Capricorn, we're seeing all of this starting to snowball together and gain momentum in our favor. So it's really exciting times that we're experiencing right now. We're also seeing numerous false flags being exposed, with some of them not even happening, as they've been thwarted before they even had a chance to manifest. Before people were talking about the anticipated solar flash, I made a video about a vision I had where this white light floods the planet, and the only thing you'll experience is unconditional love to a magnitude that's never been felt before in this third-dimensional reality. The only way I can describe it is to imagine the person or people you love the most, then magnify that by 1,000,000 times, and you'll begin to come close to what I experienced. After making that video, other people came forward and said they experienced the same thing. I also had a dream where there were 3 tidal waves, but it's not what it seems. In this dream, I was at a beach and I saw a tidal wave coming toward me. I turned around and saw a beach house that I entered. Before going in, I noticed a second tidal wave coming from the opposite direction, but this one was much larger than the first. So I went inside the beach house and waited until the water subsided. When I got out, I saw a third tidal wave coming from the opposite direction. So went back inside the beach house and once again waited for the water to subside. When I left the beach house, I remembered that my truck was on the top of a nearby mountain. So I went there, but once I got there, the energy had completely changed, and there was this feeling of peace and unconditional love. One of the classes I took in college was the psychology of sleep and dreams. Water is a mutable energy. It can be solid, liquid, or gas. These were also huge waves of energy, and that's how I saw this dream. At no point was there any fear. What I saw is two incoming waves that converge with a third cleansing wave that follows. Everybody on this planet will know when this occurs. I've had many people comment on the video saying that they too experienced tidal wave dreams and felt no fear. A handful also stated that they saw 3 tidal waves in their dreams as well. As a matter of fact, I was just contacted today by another person who saw 3 tidal waves in their dreams. Our planet is heading into an energetically charged place in our solar system, which is causing drastic climate changes on every planet. These energy waves are already arriving, but when the first 2 converge, the whole game changes. And that's exactly what it is, a game inside the Matrix. These energy waves will not only tear down the Matrix, but everything else that is of lower vibration, such as artificial intelligence and archons. That brings us back to Pluto and Capricorn. While I've never been given dates on when the shift will happen, it makes complete sense that it would happen by the time Pluto exits Capricorn in 2023, if not beforehand. On Jimmy Church's recent show, David Wilcock, speaking for Corey Good, stated something similar as he was mentioning how our DNA was gathered and mixed from numerous species around the galaxy, making us supercharged for ascension to be able to jump into a higher level of evolution through what he calls the solar flash, adding that this event will happen no later than 2023, if not beforehand. But here's something no one's talking about. While all this seems real and feels so real, it's not. It's all part of the waking dream that we're all co-creating as conscious co-creators within the dream. What we're actually doing is deciding on what we like and dislike in this dream so we know exactly what we want and don't want on the new earth. The Rosicrucians have a saying, your goal in life is not to be happy. Happiness is an emotion. Your goal in life is to experience all that you can, and within those experiences, you'll find happiness. That's exactly what we're doing in the creation of the new earth. So try not to take things so seriously in this incarnation because none of it's real until we awaken from the dream. In the meanwhile, I keep getting the same message from my guides. Love, express gratitude, forgive, ground, and maintain a high vibration. Everything else will fall into place. This is Greg Prescott from In5D. Signing off. Namaste.
So that is a sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is broadcast weekly, and a transcript of this broadcast with all supporting links are published in the show transcript on the CosmicVisionNews.com website and blog. CVN can be followed on numerous social websites, including Minds, Unseen, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you to consider carefully that which you are choosing to take with you into a higher level consciousness. We are conscious co-creators. Until our next moment of now, may you be guided and protected in your service to humanity and our planet. Namaste.